Welcome, everyone. My name is Faulkner. I'm the online event coordinator for staff development for educators, and I'd like to thank you for joining us today for Supercharging Vocab Development, grades 3 through 5 with Pat Pavelka. Before we start, there are a few things you should know. To allow for Pat to be heard clearly, we do place all of our attendees on mute. Please use the questions text box on your screen throughout the webinar to ask any questions. These will be used for our Q&A period at the end of the presentation. The session is being recorded, and assuming no technical difficulties, you'll receive a link to the archive within 48 hours, as well as a link to a certificate of participation. And finally, at the end of today's presentation, you'll receive a short survey, and by completing the survey, you do assist us in providing future complimentary webinars. Now, a little bit about SDE. At SDE, we believe educators have the most important job in the world. That's why it's our mission to empower pre-K through 12 educators across the country with sustained professional development solutions that are not only research-based and rigorous, but also practical, innovative, and fun. Our goal is to help you create environments that prepare your students for the evolving demands of the 21st century. Together, we can create extraordinary classrooms. We're pleased to have Pat Pavelka joining us for today's webinar. Pat is an exciting classroom innovator with more than 30 years of experience as a teacher and national education consultant. A sought-after speaker, she consistently earns high marks for her creative strategies for meeting the Common Core reading standards, straightforward style, and real-life answers to challenging issues. Pat is the author of 13 books, including the new series, Teaching the Common Core. Welcome, Pat. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Faulkner, and hello, everybody. It's so exciting to be with you all. It's amazing what technology can do. I'm here in Connecticut with finally no snow, and you are all across the U.S., so again, welcome, and thank you for spending time with me. I am here at my home office and walking around, hopefully not in this room where I am. I have my 4 children. I have 3 boys and a girl. And here they all are. They are 3, 5, 7, and 11. So we have them out of this room, so hopefully you will not be hearing them give you a little hello in terms of barking. So let's get right into our seminar. Vocabulary. We have a limited amount of time, so what we're going to do is concentrate on some very quick, easy things that you can do in the classroom that is research-based to really increase that vocab development for our students. So when we think about effective instruction for vocabulary, there are 3 things that we really want to make sure underlie and become the foundation for everything that we do. First of all, repetition. For students to hear words only once, maybe twice, is not enough. They really need to hear and see and use these words over and over and over again. So a lot of the activities will show how repetition can be a part of what you're doing with vocabulary development, but yet have it not be, as kids would say, boring. We already did this, we already heard this, but really do some fun things with that repetition piece. Next, we want to make sure that as we introduce new words and students read new words, that they are always taking those words and saying, how does this affect me? How would I use this word in my life with my experiences and concepts that I know? And lastly, thirdly, we want to make sure that what we do with students or what we have them do with words is meaningful. And the more connections they can make, the more they use it, the more they connect to it, the more they hear it, then those are those meaningful usage activities and strategies that deal with vocab. So let's get right into nitty-gritty. Here's what we want students to do. We want them to show what the word means. Don't tell me. I also don't want my students to go to the dictionary and copy definitions, because all that means is, number one, they can alphabetize, and let's face it, kids have a terrible time with alphabetizing. So number one, they can alphabetize. Number 2, they can copy something directly from a book, yet they may have no idea what the word means. And if a lot of our grades come from the glossary and giving definitions and finding them in the dictionary, then we're going to have a real hard time knowing whether students truly understand the word or not. So when students get words, this is what we'd like them to do with it. We would like them to pick one of these things. Here's a list of things that make a big difference in terms of meaning. Give us a visual. So take that word and draw a picture. Give us a visual. Give us synonyms and antonyms to that word. And research often says that what the brain wants to do is connect the unknown to the known. So the more we can give synonyms and antonyms to new words and say, well, it's kind of like this, it's not like this, it really helps students to wrap their thoughts and their understanding around those words. We want them to make connections. For example, let's say the word was hilarious. I want them to tell us or tell me what in your life has been hilarious. When have you been in a hilarious situation? And why would you call it hilarious? And what's the difference, too, between calling it hilarious versus funny? Is there a difference? We also want them to go from text to text. What characters that you've read about do you think are hilarious versus they're funny or they're silly? So we're also looking at subtle differences. That's why synonyms come into play, because synonyms are oftentimes words such as funny, silly, that go with hilarious in the same arena as what the word means, but they're subtly different. And so we can say this is a stronger feeling of that word, or it's not as intense a feeling. And then text to world. Think about things in our world that are hilarious or that would be humor. So we want them to make connections. Anytime we ask students to use the word in a sentence, we want that sentence to always be about home, school, or themselves. So we say to our students, please use the word in a sentence about home, school, or you. Otherwise, they tend to use the word from the story or from the book, and what happens often is they'll take the sentence that it was used in, that they learned the word from, and they change one or two words so that they get it in the right sentence structure, but they really don't understand it because all they've done is copy it but change him to her or change the dog to cat. We really want them to use that word in terms of themselves. I want definitions, but I want them in their own words. We want examples and non-examples. Let's say you're working with a science unit and one of the words is mammals. I want them to give me examples and non-examples. Let's say you're working with photosynthesis. I want them to tell me examples of things that are associated with photosynthesis and things that are not examples of things that are associated with photosynthesis. So we're really now working with clusters. Words, let's face it, we never see a word in isolation. Words are always with other words. And one of my mistakes has been that I'm not using these words in conjunction with 3 or 4 words that are like it, 3 or 4 words that are not like it. Places that you would use that word with a mom, with a dad, with a friend, with a teacher. So really looking at all of these different things that you see now in front of you. Pros and cons. So whatever the word is, if it's appropriate, give me some pros, give me some cons. So, and even, for example, a word like hilarious. What are the pros to somebody being hilarious? What are the cons to somebody being hilarious? When would hilarious be a negative word to use? What situation? When would it be positive? And so you see, as you look at all of these things on the screen in front of you, we are getting away from this is what a dictionary says, but we want them to show what the word means. That's the key. Show me. So now, here are some examples. The examples that you're going to see are 3rd grade through 6th grade examples. These are their assignments when it comes to vocabulary words. Their assignment is, show me what the word means. Don't tell me. So let's see how they've done. Here's some examples. Sympathy. This, when you look at the picture, she's got it. And if you look at on the bottom of the page where it says definition and sentence from the book, look at that definition. Act or capacity of entering into or sharing the feelings of others. Now, I could see half half of my class not understanding act or capacity of entering. I can see them not understanding. So just being able to do those two bottom things are not really showing us that the child knows it. But look at the sentence that they wrote and the visual. That tells me, yes, they understand what happened in terms of the word, what the word means. Putrid, foul-smelling, rotten, decayed. And I love the way she put those little smelly lines on there. This is a third grader. The word was distinct. Now, I did think that the child heard the word distinct and thought extinct because he drew dinosaurs. So the next day he got the paper back and we said to him, the word is not extinct. The word is distinct. And he said, I know. Look at my picture clearly. So look at this picture clearly. Do you see the dinosaur that has the polka dots? I have my arrow on it. That polka dotted dinosaur is distinct. So when you have your students start this, what you may find is that you have to help them a little bit in terms of it's a great picture, but if you had written the word distinct right next to it, distinct dinosaur, then I would have understood a little bit more. So as they're working through this, you really want them to tell you on that paper everything that's in their head. The word is flatter. This child wrote, Maria's telling Sue she has nice hair. But in Maria's head, she hates her hair. That's why she only wants to go to her party. That's why she's flattering her. And if you look at the picture, it says Tommy girl, ugly girl, nice hair, not really. And so most of the students with this word did not get the subtleties that in a story the word flatter was not used positively. The students in the story were flattering the new child. They didn't really like her, but her parents owned the general store. So they wanted free candy, so they flattered her. They didn't really mean it. This child got it. And so you'll see with your visuals which students really have it, a depth of that meaning versus which ones you're not really sure have the depth of those words. We were working with words other than walked. So we had strolled, sauntered. Any thoughts of what this one is? It starts with an L. This child used the word lumbered. And he laughed and he said, look at the trees. It's like lumber. And when you lumber, you move around heavily and clumsily. I thought that was great. Now think about science and social studies. The word is talons. On the top, I want the definition in their own word. So it's the bird's long, sharp claws. I want the sentence then to be something that they've learned in their own language. So he wrote, raptors, sharp, powerful, long, black talons are their weapon. Same unit, migrate, means to move from one climate to another. And you see the little sign that says home right here. Raptors need to migrate to find a new home. So there's the word home. And here's the last one for that science unit, carrion. Dead animals which are eaten by scavengers. And if you see this bird up here, yum. And there's the dead mouse. And you see the X on the eyes. X marks the spot. And I don't think any child that whole year forgot what carrion meant. And I actually had a couple of parents who came in and said, what are you learning about in science? Because anytime we pass an animal that is dead on the side of the road, my child will say, hey, there's some carrion there. And so this really gets students to understand it, and they really love learning new words. This is a 5th grader. The word is now I have to think about the word. The definition is to talk on and on and on in a dull and monotonous way. And so the word was, and I have an absolute blank, I think it was monotony. And so they talked about that it's the same thing over and over and over. I know what the word is now. It was drone. The story was where the child was saying at school that the teacher was droning on and on. And so this is the picture for drone, to talk on and on. Here's the word exasperate. So this is the definition right from the dictionary, to excite the anger of, but look at what this child did. Jonathan, will you please help me make dinner? I'm busy right now. I get exasperated when I ask my brother to help me get dinner ready. And so do you see, when this child goes home, we said to him, please, when you have to do your job tonight of helping dinner, setting the table, and your brother doesn't help you and he's with the TV, there's the remote, I want you to say to your mother, you are exasperated. And see, that is the big piece that we are now seeing when we use a lot of the activities that I'll be sharing with you today, is they use them in their speaking vocabulary and in their writing vocabulary. So here's two more samples, and then we'll keep going. Nondescript. I will admit, my first thought when I saw this was the child didn't put any effort at all into this. There's no color, there's no detail, but don't you see how he made it nondescript? So I was actually heading over to his seat with this in my hand to say, you need to work on it more, you didn't put any effort in. And he looked at me and said, don't you just love the way I made my paper nondescript? And I said, yes, it looks beautifully dull and boring and plain. And so you have to look very carefully, because oftentimes kids are thinking something, but they haven't written it, and it's more subtle, and so you have to look very carefully. All right. The other thing that these are really great for is similes and metaphors. Think about similes and metaphors in terms of vocabulary development. Boy, do you get a real picture in your head about the character or the setting or how somebody is feeling based on those. So this was a sixth grade in the book The Fighting Ground, and the metaphor was the forest was a vast cage around Jonathan. Look at the picture. Do you see Jonathan and the vast cage that was made with the trees? Here's one more. His voice coiled after me like a whip around my ankle. And so there's the words, ouch, because they stay with you and they snap you just like a rubber band when it hurts because they've been mean and not kind. Those are the things that we really want to see. Don't be concerned about using paper. Use scrap paper. And so here's an example of a classroom that just put it together with all different kinds of scrap paper. There's a box in the classroom. And so this was from a novel that they were working with, and we put it together with, you can see right here, a pipe cleaner. So remember, repetition was one of the things that we want. So we've worked a lot with these words here, and I can tell you, as we're working with these words, the kids know them because they're drawing them, they're writing them, they're talking about them. But oftentimes what happens is the repetition isn't there enough, so that in a month or two from now, if I were to say to them, tell me what modest means, tell me what salary means, tell me what attentively means, or perseverance, they can't. Or they'll say, I think I remember you hearing it, but I don't know what it means. So what we want to do is have these available all year. So you see in front of you, this is one child's. What we'll do now is we're going to take one from each child in the classroom for the different words. So I'll, for example, say the word modest. Somebody share theirs with the class. So they'll give me their modest page. Another child will give me his perseverance page. And so now you make one of these that's a class set that has every single child's example for one word in there. And we put them in a treasure chest. So this is the treasure chest from a fourth grade classroom. Inside the treasure chest are baggies. In the baggies, they're gallon Ziplocs, are the novels or the story that these words came from and these words. Once a day, I try to go into that treasure chest and just pull out a baggie, show the kiddos the book, and then just flip through those words just to see if they can remember them. And if they don't, you want this to be quick. So you're going to basically tell them what the word is and say, remember, the character did this. Once they take those words and they look at them really on a weekly, daily basis, and you just show them the cover of the book, that's that repetition that really solidifies the understanding and the depth of those words. Every Friday, and again, you have to make this work for you, every Friday we have a treasure chest activity for about 20 minutes. Here's one thing that you can do with them. So every Friday, kids get into groups of 3 or 4. Every group gets a baggie with the words and the book. And they have maybe 1 to 2 minutes to flip through the words, and the book is there. Also, I'm going to backtrack for a minute. On these words here are page numbers in the book where the words were. So now, when they have their treasure, the baggie in front of them, and they're flipping through, if they don't know a word, they go right to that page and paragraph. And for the most part, somebody will remember it based on that area in the book. If they don't, then what they do is they put a Post-it note on that page or on that index card on the word. And then what we do at the end when we all come back together is I flip through them and look at where the Post-its are. And it's funny because sometimes you see 3 or 4 Post-its on the same word, which means all the groups had problems with one word. So it's a way to keep the words repetitive in terms of their exposure. It's a way to use them. And boy, have we seen a lot of vocabulary gains and really seen our kiddos use vocab. Because what's the sense of having and learning vocabulary if you don't understand it when you see it in a different book, or if you can't use it when you're writing? And so every Friday they have the baggie for about 2 minutes. Timer goes off, and then they just move to the next group. So they probably will go through 2 to 3 baggies every Friday, just as a quick review. So that activity, again, is assignments. That's one of my #1 homework assignments. Homework assignments are hard to balance. They have to be things that the students can do in practice, but if they don't do their homework, and tomorrow your lesson is really based on that homework, sometimes it becomes difficult. I will tell you, this is homework that always comes back. They just love working with the words at home. Remember, we want the students to connect the words to you, connect it to yourself. And so, for example, they had the word scowl. And here's what we want to say to them. We'll teach the word scowl in terms of the book. But then what we want to do immediately is get scowl out of the book. So we say to them, when or why would you scowl? Tell me 3 reasons why you would scowl. Or I would say to them, tell me 3 things you would do right now that would make me, your teacher, scowl. When would you not scowl? And then would you want to spend your time with a person who scowled all day? Yes or no? Tell me why or why not. And so we really want to work with showing students how these words connect. If they don't see the connection to their life, they won't use them. If they can't connect it to what they know, they're not going to use it. And again, that really is our top 5 pieces of things that we really want to do with vocabulary, is connect it, is use it, read it, write it, and then have that repetition piece. We really want that in every day. So now, here's what they do in their book. This is a 6th grade reading the book Maniac McGee. And so you see the Post-it notes sticking out on the side. As they're reading, they're writing down words that they do not know. And they're leaving it right on the page. And when we talk about this, I don't want to be picking out the vocabulary words all the time. I want my students to be able to say, I didn't understand this word, or what does this mean? And they're doing a really good job with it. When we pull a word out, we want to use question words. Who would use this word? Where would you use this word? What would be involved with using this word? Why would you use this word? When and how? So for example, let's look at these words. Let's take goaded. Who would you goad? Why would you do that? How would you goad a person? Or endure. What kind of things have you endured? What kind of things has a friend of yours endured? What kinds of things did you do to help them endure something? Why does somebody endure something? Why does somebody not give up but endure? So that's what we're looking for. Don't just tell me what it means, but I want you to use it, because that's where true vocab development and achievement comes, is from being able to use it. We have an assignment that says top 5. This means I want them to take a word and give me the top 5 things that are associated with that word. So for example, brawny. I would say to them, give me 5 things that are brawny. Or give me 5 things that you think are not brawny. We could say to them, give me 5 things that you feel are resilient. Give me 5 reasons why somebody would be resilient. Tell me one thing in your life that you are resilient about. And then tell me 3 things that you do to make that resilience happen. What do you do? And see, that is the assignment that I want them to do. I don't want them in the dictionary. Basically, it's better to give them the answer, tell them what it means, but then they have to use it and play with it, because then when they see it on a test, in another book, they know it inside and out. So that being said, in terms of not always going to that dictionary and just giving them the meaning, sometimes words really can be figured out by students if they use the context clues. And so what we really have to do is teach context clues. My mistake is that I'm giving them the word that I want them to use context clues with. And I've done half the work for them. They have to figure out what word they don't know so that they can use and know when to use context clues. So here are 2 activities. One is an oral activity that you would use whole group, small group, with partners. The other is an assignment to help students using context clues. So I'm going to give you a moment to read these 2 prompts. You'll see that they're exactly the same except for the word heard and the word read. So obviously the word heard is for read aloud, whether it's a novel or it could be science or social studies, so they're listening, and obviously read is when they're reading it on their own. When we ask a child, what do you think the word means? I'm amazed at how many of my olders are still putting their shoulders up to their ears as if to say, I don't know. The hardest thing for some students is starting an answer. Even if they don't know, I want them to try. And if they don't know how to try. So here, these 2 prompts are on the wall in the classroom. And when I ask a child about a word, if it's been a read aloud, I want that child to say, I heard the word ornery, or I heard you read the word ornery. I think it means grouchy and not really happy, because that's how the grandmother was described when she was in the hospital for 10 days. So do you see, it starts them off where, all right, this is the word I heard, and I think it means this, and this is why I think. Or I read the word ornery, I think it means this because of this. The funny thing about these 2 prompts is it's made by kiddos who don't really like to be put on the spot. They put themselves on the spot because it's almost saying, I'm telling you right now I don't know what the answer is, but I'm going to try it anyway. And when I just say to them, try it, they're quiet. But when they have to say this, they say, I heard the word Blustery. I don't know what it means, but this is what I think it could mean. Yeah, so I'm getting my students who don't really, again, like to be put on the spot, taking more chances and being a little bit braver because they're almost saying, I don't know it, but I'm going to try it, and here's what I think and here's why. Part of the whole issue with us as teachers assessing or looking at working with vocabulary is, how do we help them if we don't know what they're thinking? And so they have to say something to help us figure out, what they're thinking. And this has just been amazing for those kiddos who don't want to talk, or they just don't know where to begin because they don't know the word, and so they don't even want to try it. So again, this is whole class, small group, and it's typically led with the teacher. I've also heard partners doing this. They'll say to each other, I don't know what this word means, do you? And the partner will say, no, I don't know what it means, but I think it means this because. That is everything that I'm looking for in my instruction, that the students take those strategies and use them when they're not right next to me. So here's the other piece. This is a piece of notebook paper that is folded into thirds. So it's folded into three. Now notice the three that it's folded into. They're not three even parts. So it's folded, my kids call them louver doors. So you take the two ends of the paper and fold them in so they meet. So when you crease it and you open it up, you have a skinny section, a larger section, and then a thinner section. So now this is a piece of lined paper. This is the strategy to try to figure out words using context clues. First, we want to read the sentence before the one with the word in it. So my students write the word before in big red letters coming down. Sometimes they read the sentence. It's up to them. And then next means you read that sentence. Last, I want to read the sentence after the one that has the word in it that I don't really know. So there's two steps now. Step one is they're reading, and they come across a word they don't know. So they stop. First, they read the sentence again before. Next, they read the sentence with. So this is with. Read the sentence with the word. Then last, read the sentence after the word. Now go back. First, read the sentence one more time before, and then put a synonym. I'm having a hard time with my pen, so this word says synonym. Write a synonym to that word. What it gets them to do is think, what would make sense in that? So what they will do is they will write the word here and then write a synonym. Write the word here and then write a synonym. So as they're reading and they get stuck, do you see how quick this is? It's not stop, look it up, try to figure it out. It's stop, quick, write the word down. Now read around the word again, before, with, and after. Now do it again and put down a synonym, a word that would make sense. Sometimes also, here's the word, I want them to not just give me a synonym, but give me a phrase. Because, for example, the word was hesitated. And so my kids wrote, some of them, this was for third grade, they wrote it, waited a minute, didn't do it quickly, stopped before he went in, stopped before he continued to do what he was doing. So it's not always just one word that becomes the synonym, but it's a phrase. So that made a big difference for kids to be able to do phrases and not just a word, because sometimes a word is too difficult. The other thing to remember is when they write the word, I want the page and the paragraph where they found the word. When this is a piece of notebook paper, when that is filled, they turn it in and they get a grade on it. The grade is, number one, are they picking appropriate words? Because I have students who wrote down every single word on that piece of paper they already know. So I want them to know you're not graded on that you don't know it. Number one, your grade is, can you pull out words that I expect a fourth grader or a fifth grader to maybe have concerns with or not really know? Second, how well are you able to put in a word that is closely aligned with that word that you are trying to figure out. It's not going to be perfect, but what we want students to do is to get an approximation of what that word means, an approximation of that word. All right, we're going to continue. Creating images. So take a moment and read this. As kiddos listen or read text, as the teacher, I want proof that you got that movie going on in your mind. Because at the grade levels that are here with me today, this was for grades, we concentrated on those older grades, 3 to 6. Most of those children, many of those children are in novels or books that don't have a lot of pictures. And so when you're in books that have pictures in the primary grades, there's the picture. But now the picture is gone. Where is that picture? It's in your head. And what helps you create that image? The words. And so we've got to do something to help students who struggle with comprehension in terms of not pronouncing or saying the words, but they can read everything that you give them, but it's the comprehension piece based on the words. They can't paint a picture in their head. So this is what we want to say to them. How did you get the picture in your head? What words helped you see it, hear it, smell it? Think of the senses. And then think about emotions. What word or phrase helped you really understand what that character was feeling and what that character was going through? So the activity that you're going to see next is a whole class activity that we practice using picture books. And then we'll turn it from practice in a mini lesson with picture books to grade level, either novels or books, Basil's, whatever your reading texts are, for them to use it on their own. So here's the whole group activity. You see across the top, taste, smell, see, hear, touch. So these are what words do for us. Words help us make the movie in our head. And if we don't have a movie in our head, it's very hard to have comprehension because you don't see it. You can't picture it. Also, I want them to think about feelings. So these words suggest feelings or suggest character traits, which is really inferencing if you think about it. So you want to start with easy, fun picture books and then move up to grade level. So typically when I introduce this activity, this is a Monday to Friday for me. I start with first grade, second grade level books on Monday and Tuesday, just fun picture books. And then I move up third grade and then fourth grade, and then by Friday I'm at grade level. And so you'll play with this again, make it easy and fun, and then bump it up. So I read a story to them, and this was Jan Brett's story, The Hat. And so I read it once, then we went back, and I stopped on the bottom of each page, and I said to the kiddos, tell me what word or phrase on this page helped you paint a picture in one of these areas, feelings or senses. Now, the most important part of this is after somebody gives you an idea or what they did, I put it on an index card, we graph it. I then immediately ask another child in that classroom, do they agree or disagree? And here's what happened. For example, ridiculous thing. You see it over here under these words suggest feelings. One of my girls said ridiculous thing should go under words suggest feelings. And I said, why? And she said, well, because he's embarrassed. He looks so ridiculous that everybody's laughing at him. It looks silly on him because it's ridiculous, and he's just really doesn't even want anybody to look at him anymore. He's embarrassed. Great, she backed it up. It helped her see. So then I looked at the class and I said, okay, Jamal, do you agree or disagree with ridiculous thing under that category? And he was funny. He said, I disagree. I think ridiculous thing should have been put, a ridiculous thing should have been put over here under C, because I want to see what looks so ridiculous. If I can't see it in my head, then how am I going to know how he feels? Well, they were both right. And I thought it was pretty funny that the girl had the feeling piece and the boy had the let me just see it so I can laugh at it. So we kind of joked about that in the classroom a little bit. So start with fun picture books so students understand that it's the words, it's the vocabulary. And one word can really change every meaning that you have in that paragraph or even that sentence. For example, if it had just said, he had that thing on his head, is really very different from he had that ridiculous thing on his head, because now you get a different feel for what he had on his head. So, and it was a hat. So if I say to students, I'm going to put a hat on my head, or hey, look at that hat on that person's head. Tell me what you're thinking. Now I'm going to give you the same sentence with one new word. I'm going to look at that ridiculous hat on that person's head, or I'm going to put a ridiculous hat on my head. You're now looking for something that is silly, funny, or unusual. So we want our students to know that you really have to concentrate on the words the author uses, because word choice will change comprehension over in a moment's notice with one word. So here's their assignment now. So you've practiced this a couple of times. Now their assignment is take a piece of construction paper or lined paper. Some kids like big, some like small. It depends on really if you're third grade or sixth grade. I want them to take the piece of paper and fold it into 6. And they label each column with these 6 topics, the 5 senses and then emotions or feelings. And then whatever book they're in, I want them to take a chapter of a book and go back into it and look carefully for words and phrases, remember phrases too, that really help them see, hear, smell, touch, taste, and get emotions. And now you're differentiating, because you'll have students who are perhaps in a 2nd grade level book, and I've got students in 6th grade level book in the same classroom. So we were able to look at a real high-level piece of vocab development, which is it's the words that create the comprehension. And now you go back into the book you're reading and look at how that word choice, see, it's the word choice that the author uses that gives us the comprehension. And also, word choice, that really is author's craft. So we want to look at, why do you think the author used the word clever and not smart? He said this character was clever. He didn't say the character was smart. And so now look at the discussion between, is the word clever and smart, are those words the same? Are they subtly different? Can you be clever and smart at the same time? Can you be smart and clever at the same time? See, that's been my missing piece. I haven't really looked at all of the discussions and connections when we're working with vocab words. Why did the author use cooked up a plan instead of made a plan, or came up with an idea? Why did he use cooked up a plan? Well, my students said it sounds a little more devious. It sounds like he, cooked it up instead of made it, in that he was thinking over it for a long period of time, because cooking kind of, one of my kids said it's like simmering. The idea was simmering. That's what we want our vocabulary discussions to be. So when you're back now with your kiddos in the classroom, think about the word choice. When you introduce a word, have them give you 5 synonyms, 5 antonyms. Have them give you 5 things that are fragile, 5 things that are docile, 3 animals that are not docile. But take those words, perseverance, describe it. Describe perseverance in this classroom. Describe perseverance in terms of you. That's where we're going to see big gains. So we have one more quick thing to look at that looks at, when we do a lot with synonyms, we want to look at levels of intensity. It's called line them up. Look at all these words here that really have something to do with rain. But if you write that it is raining outside versus it's pouring outside, or it's drizzling, or there's a deluge outside, you get a different understanding. So don't just say rain. Tell me, Maybe it is rain. But what's the difference between rain and pouring and drizzle and mist? Think about, don't tell me your character walked home. Tell me he moseyed home. Does he really want to get home fast? Tell me he raced home. Does he really want to get home fast? What about a character that strolls versus a character that moseys? What's the difference in terms of how that character is feeling just by the way they are walking? And think about, don't use the word said. Give me a word other than said. Exclaimed, hollered, whimpered. All of those give you a different understanding of characters. And so I want my students to be so attentive to word choice as they read, so that our discussions say, why do you think the author used that word, and how did that word now change everything that you were thinking about, or really help you form that picture? So Faulkner, I'm going to turn it back to you.
All right.
I'm going to just put that first screen up that we looked at. This one, just so as you're asking questions, you think about these three things.
Excellent. All right, and Pat, I hope everybody enjoyed today's presentation, and we are just going to take a minute or two to let everybody submit any last questions that they might have via that text window on your screen. In the meantime, I'd like to mention a few things. As a special thank you for attending today's webinar, I'd like to offer you a 10% discount off SDE professional development resources, events, and on-site training by using the promo code W042915 before May 29th, 2015. And again, that's good on Crystal Springs books, good with public events, and also with in-service type trainings. And along that lines, I'm actually just going to copy and paste into the chat window here and send it all out to you. If you're interested in taking a look at Pat's books on Crystal Springs Books, that will actually get you, that link that I just chatted out will get you directly to a page with her books on it.
And Faulkner, I am going to be next week a full day in Oklahoma City on May 7th and a full day in Wichita on May 8th. So would that discount work for those?
It is, if people, I think they can't go back and reuse them for registration.
No, if they can't, not to reuse.
Yep, they'll be able to use that code to save the 10%.
Got it. So if you can see me next week and you're near Oklahoma City or Wichita, I'd love to see you next week for a full day.
And Pat's also going to be at our national conferences, which are in Las Vegas, July 6th through 11th, and so that you can use the 10% savings on that as well. If you go to sde.com or give us a call at 877-388-2054, we can help you out with that. And keep in mind also, Pat can come on-site to your school or district for customized training that meets your school's unique needs as well. And please do follow us on social media. You can find SDE. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest under SDE for Educators with the number 4. And on LinkedIn, you search for Staff Development for Educators as well. And finally, live attendees of the webinar will receive a follow-up email within 48 hours that does include a link to a printable certificate of participation, and it will also include a link to the archive recording of this webinar. Now, thanks for your patience, everybody. Let's get to the questions that came in. All right, Pat, I had, let me see, Jill was asking, with the treasure chest idea, how often do you use that activity?
We try to use the treasure chest daily. So not for a long period of time because our curriculum is already packed. And so for 2 minutes, I'll tell a child, go and get a treasure. They pull out a baggie and a book, and I take 1 minute, 2 minutes tops, and I just flip through the words. And we go over them again. And again, if they don't know the word, I'm just going to tell them what it means and say, remember in this book. And so if you can do something every day with just a flip through one of them, it's great. And then every Friday, the kids break into those groups and practice a treasure activity so that they get through those words again and again every Friday.
All right. Susan was asking, Pat, if you have actually, if any of these ideas are in your books, and I'm not sure which, if they're specifically
Yes.
mostly coming from a certain one.
They are in 3 books. One of the books is called Differentiating Assignments. Another book is called Differentiating Assignments in a Whole Class Setting. or differentiation in a whole class setting. And then the third one is guided reading management. There's a whole section in guided reading structure and management on centers and assignments, and there's a whole thing on vocab development in there. So again, it's differentiating assignments, differentiation in the classroom, and guided reading management.
All right, and I've got a number of people actually asking for the code again, so I'm going to, it is W042915, so today's date, and I'm actually going to chat that out to everybody as well. And that should be good on Crystal Springs books, and also if you give us a call at that 800 number to register or talk to people about on-site training, that code is good for that 10% across the board. So let me see. Our next question is, Leanne was asking, she said you mentioned 5 points and wasn't able to get them down in time when you were talking about connect the words to you, and she was... Yep, and
connect the words to you, that's one.
Okay. And yeah, she's asking for the whole, yeah, all 5.
Yeah. 2 is connect from book to book. So when you find a word in one book, can you think of another character that was feeling despondent? Can you think of another book that would have his voice coiled after me like a whip around my ankle? What are the character in another book? The third one is repetition. Over and over and over again. The fourth one is connect to you. We get the connect to you. And the fifth is that you want to give them assignments that those words are used to their experiences. So words, take them out of the book and connect them to their experiences. So you intro in the book and then get them out of the book so they use them.
All right, I've got a question here. Asking with strategies like line it up, is that whole class that you're working with, or are you breaking kids up into groups?
Line it up, and I'm going to just put that slide up here. We have, I would recommend in the classroom, that we have lists of words other than. So they have a word other than this word. So instead of said, we've got a whole list of these. And as we're reading and finding new words, we're adding to them. Once a week, their assignment is to take the words from one of the lists and put them in order of intensity, from least to most or most to least. So the activity with getting the words is really a whole class during science and social studies and language arts and read alouds. Sometimes in guided reading, if we come across a great word, we'll introduce it to everybody. So now that list is whole class, but then as an individual assignment once a week, I want them playing with it. So for example, here, I would want them to give me whispered, said, yelled, screamed. And here I would want them to give me mosey, stroll, walk, run, race. And again, it's not exact. You know, they may disagree with 1 or 2 words. As long as it's in an order and they can back it up, they got it.
All right, and I'm going to, I'm trying to figure out exactly what this question might be, and you might be able to figure it out, Pat. But within in the area of the context clues slides in that top 5 area, Lisa was asking, what about words that aren't necessarily synonym and antonym friendly?
Correct. Let me go back to that. For example, top 5. Sometimes you're going to get a word that has no synonym and no antonym. Let's take a science word. Let's take Confederate or the Confederates. There's really no, synonym or antonym. What I want them to do is give me the top 5 other words that are associated with Confederate. Or the word photosynthesis. There's not really a synonym for that. So what you'll find is many times in science, social studies, I want them to give me an association. Top 5 words associated with photosynthesis. Top 5 words associated with this. For example, brawny, top 5 things that are brawny. Now see, that's one that you could give some synonyms, some antonyms. The other thing that really helps are phrases, like the word hesitate. It's hard to find one word synonym for hesitate, but you can find phrases. For example, waited a minute, didn't do it right away, thought before he moved. See, those are phrases that are synonymous with hesitated. So between the phrases instead of a single word and associations, that will really help with those context clues in terms of a specific synonym.
All right, Pat, and we've got a couple more questions we're going to try to get to. And I also just wanted to let everybody know I am also chatting out the address. If you click on that, you'll actually go to Pat's presenter page on the National Conference on Differentiated Instruction within that site, if you're interested in taking a look and seeing which sessions and what Pat's going to be presenting in Las Vegas this summer.
And if you do see me, you have to come up to me and say you heard me.
Absolutely.
I'd love to see people.
And we love hearing that people have heard of us or heard of Pat through the webinars. It makes us very happy to hear. So make sure you do say something. Okay, I've got, let me see. Jessica was asking, do you use novels for whole group or for the guided reading? And wondering if you do, what are some favorites?
I do use novels. Oh boy, favorites. Some of my favorites, and I have to say, I'm a real traditionalist in that I like some of those, love some of those novels that are real traditional novels. Older levels, I love The Giver. I really like Maniac McGee. Roald Dahl is just so funny. I like the James and the Giant Peach. I also like the one with the foxes, with the farmers that are called Bogus, Bunce, and Bean. So I think the title of it is Three Funny Farmers. I also like Gary Paulson. Gary Paulson is a great author for boys. And oftentimes at the older levels, we've got to somehow turn these boys on. And so Gary Paulson has a lot of their wilderness, their outdoor books for the olders, especially the boys.
All right. It looks like we've actually just got a couple minutes, so I'm going to try to respect everybody's schedules and timing and if we didn't get to your question, we will be posting all the questions and answers. I'll be sending over the full Q&A list to Pat, and as soon as we have that back, we'll post that along with the webinar archive, and we'll let you know on Facebook and Twitter that is up and available. I want to thank Pat for joining us today, and I hope everybody else enjoyed today's presentation and that everybody has a great rest of the day, and the weekend is coming up soon. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.